Imagine you are stranded in this scorching desert, right? You are dying from a venomous snake bite, and the absolute only cure you are offered is to stare at a bronze statue of the exact same creature that is currently killing you.
Yeah, which sounds completely counterintuitive. I mean, it makes zero logical sense.
Exactly. Before we jump into deciphering that massive historical puzzle today, I just want to start off by offering a divine blessing for your day and honestly, for your entire week ahead. May you find clarity, purpose, and real peace in whatever challenge you happen to be tackling right now.
That is a wonderful way to start. And, you know, it is a profound historical puzzle we are looking at today. We are going straight into the mechanics of how a whole society shifts its entire identity.
We really are. Today, we are taking a deep dive into this ancient, highly pivotal text, which is Numbers chapter 21. We'll be pulling apart the historical, the geographical, and cultural layers. And to do that, we're using expert study notes from two distinct biblical translations.
Right, the Holman Study Bible and the NAA, which is the Nova Almeida Actualizada Study Bible.
Yep, exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this massive turning point in ancient Israelite history. We're looking at the exact moment a wandering group of people who were basically stuck in a generational cycle of complaining and defeat finally transitioned into this confident force capable of actually conquering new territories. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the narrative opens up with this incredibly sudden, jarring conflict down in the Negev. The Israelites are migrating, and out of nowhere they are ambushed by the Canaanite king of Arad.
And this isn't just a random spot, right?
No, not at all. This attack happens along a very specific route called the Way of Atharim. It's an established caravan route.
Which essentially makes a massive, super slow-moving group of refugees sitting ducks.
Completely. The king of Arad totally exploits this vulnerability. He attacks and he actually captures some of the Israelites as prisoners.
Wow. And, you know, up to this point in their history, the standard response to this kind of trauma has always been just total psychological collapse.
Oh, yeah. We've seen them panic, blame their leadership, talk about surrendering, and just going all the way back to Egypt.
Right. They have this really deep-seated victim mentality.
They did, but the response here, it shows a radical shift in their whole societal mindset. Instead of just defaulting to panic, Israel responds by making a direct, highly calculated vow to God.
And what was the vow, exactly?
They promise that if they are granted victory, they will completely destroy the Canaanite cities.
Meaning they don't keep anything for themselves.
Exactly. They are employing this ancient concept of dedicating the spoils of war entirely to the divine, so they won't take any plunder for their own enrichment. It proves they are fighting for survival and divine reliance, you know, not for profit.
That is a huge shift, and God actually grants the victory, right?
Yes, they win, and they name the site Hormah, which literally translates to destruction.
Man, I look at this whole thing through the lens of a struggling sports franchise. Just imagine a team stuck in this awful generational rut.
Right, like the decades-long losing streak.
Exactly. And they've always relied on one veteran star player. In this historical case, that's Aaron, who's just died. When that foundational leader passes away, you kind of expect the whole organization to just fold.
Right, you expect a total collapse.
But instead, stepping out of the shadow of that massive loss, they suddenly find their own tactical rhythm. They actually break the losing streak.
And that breaking of the streak is so crucial. The NAA study notes point out why this specific victory at Hormah matters so much. It reverses a deeply ingrained generational trauma.
Wait, how so?
Well, years earlier, which was recorded back in Numbers chapter 14, the Israelites attempted an unauthorized military campaign into this exact same geographical area.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was the same spot.
Yeah, the exact same desert. They went in without God's blessing back then, and they were utterly crushed by the Canaanites and the Amalekites. So overcoming the king of Arad at Hormah now, it isn't just a minor skirmish. It is a massive psychological breakthrough.
It totally rewrites their history of failure in that specific place.
I love that. And for you listening, just think about what first victories look like in your own life when you are finally overcoming a long period of stagnation. Getting that first win, it just completely alters your trajectory.
It really does shift the baseline of what a group believes is actually possible.
Definitely. But, you know, geographical realities don't really care about your recent momentum. Right after this awesome triumph at Hormah, they hit a massive roadblock.
They do. They need to move forward, but the territory of Edom is completely blocking the most direct route.
And back then, you couldn't just walk through someone else's land, right?
Not at all. The ancient Near East was governed by strict territorial borders. Bypassing Edom requires a brutal, just exhausting detour. They basically have to march south toward the Red Sea,
Yeah.
specifically the Gulf of Aqaba, just to go all the way around Edomite land.
And the route they are forced to take is down the Araba Valley, which, if you know the geography, is part of the Great Rift Valley. It is essentially a geographical oven. It's an incredibly hostile environment.
Yeah, it drops below sea level, it is completely barren, and the heat is just unforgiving. Taking a massive group of people who just gained a shred of confidence and plunging them right back into a grueling, exhausting march. I mean, that is just a recipe for disaster.
And the environment absolutely breaks their resolve. The text notes that the people become deeply, deeply impatient. The harshness of the Araba basically strips away the glow of that recent victory.
And the old habits come right back.
Exactly. The ingrained habits of rebellion totally resurface. They turn their anger directly on God and Moses, and they deploy their classic complaints about having no water.
And they complain about the food too, right? The manna?
Yeah, the daily provision that has literally kept them alive for decades. They call it miserable or vile food.
Wow. And the consequence for this massive regression is severe, and it's immediate. The desert itself essentially becomes the punishment.
It does. The text says God sends fiery snakes into the camp, and the bites from these snakes are fatal.
Okay, so the term fiery, we need to talk about that because the Holman study notes provide some really necessary biological context here.
Yeah, the term fiery doesn't mean the snakes were, literally engulfed in flames or anything like that.
They weren't little dragons.
Exactly. It describes the physiological effect of the venom itself. Experts identify these as likely being carpet vipers, specifically Echis carinatus or Echis coloritis.
Which are highly venomous.
Extremely venomous. And they are native to the Araba region. The venom of a carpet viper causes severe coagulopathy.
Which means your blood stops clotting properly, right?
Yes, exactly. It causes massive internal bleeding accompanied by this intense burning inflammation. So the victims were experiencing a literal burning sensation from the bites.
That is absolutely terrifying. The camp is thrown into total chaos. The people finally recognize their rebellion. They go to Moses,
Right.
admit their fault, and ask him to intercede.
And Moses does pray for a solution. But the prescribed cure is where we really have to pause.
Yes, because here's where it gets really interesting. Why use the very thing that's killing them as the symbol for healing? I mean, isn't that totally counterintuitive? If you are terrified of these carpet vipers slithering all through your camp, why on earth is the solution to look at a bronze sculpture of one?
It is deeply counterintuitive, but that is actually the underlying mechanism of the lesson here.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, the Holman notes clarified that this cure functioned purely through grace and faith. It wasn't through any inherent magical property of the bronze metal itself.
So it wasn't a magic wand.
Right. By requiring the victim to look at a representation of their judgment, it forced a deliberate, conscious act of trust in the divine command. They had to literally look at the source of their fear and trust that it was being transformed into the instrument of their survival.
Wow. So it requires real cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You have to override your natural human instinct to look away from the threat and instead confront it head on with faith.
Exactly. And what's amazing is we also have physical evidence grounding this whole event in the regional culture of the time.
Oh, right. The archaeological find.
Yes, the NBA study notes highlight a truly fascinating archaeological excavation in the Timna Valley. This is an area rich in ancient copper mines, situated right in the very region the Israelites were traversing.
And what did they find?
Archaeologists uncovered a Midianite sanctuary dating to roughly this exact era, and inside they found a 13-centimeter copper snake.
That is incredible. It grounds the whole narrative in historical reality. Moses isn't just pulling a random symbol out of thin air.
Right. He is utilizing a visual language that the people of the ancient Near East fundamentally understood. It was a known cultural motif for the region.
But this bronze serpent, it has a really long shadow in history.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
Fast forwarding all the way to the New Testament, the Gospel of John draws a direct theological line from this very moment to the crucifixion of Jesus.
Emphasizing that same concept, right?
Right.
Looking upon an instrument of death to actually receive life.
Exactly. However, if we stay within the history of ancient Israel, the NBA notes reveal a deeply flawed human epilogue to this specific object.
Yeah, because people tend to cling to the tools of their past survival.
They really do. The Israelites preserved this bronze snake. They actually carried it with them for centuries after the desert wanderings. And over time, it totally devolved. It went from being a memorial of divine grace into a literal idol.
A magic talisman.
Yeah, they called it the Nehushtan. Hundreds of years later, during the reign of King Hezekiah, the people were actively burning incense to it. So Hezekiah had to literally shatter the artifact.
Because a historical tool of healing had completely morphed into a present-day stumbling block.
Exactly, a profound psychological trap.
It really is. But back in the timeline of Numbers 21, the bronze snake serves its immediate purpose. The people survive the venom, and this healing triggers a massive surge of renewed forward movement.
Right, they finally break out of that awful Arabah Valley detour. The text records a rapid succession of encampments as they move north through the Transjordan. They set out for Oboth, move through the Zered Valley, and press onward to the Arnon River.
And the geographical progress is really mirroring a cultural evolution here. As they march, the narrative actually pauses to reference a document called the Book of the Wars of the Lord.
And what's fascinating here is that we are actually seeing the formation of an official national archive.
Like they're writing their own history in real time.
Exactly. The NEBA notes explain that the Book of the Wars of the Lord is a lost ancient text. It served as an Israelite compilation of poetry and historical accounts documenting their military victories. The biblical text quotes from it as this familiar, authoritative source of their era.
It functions almost like a locker room playlist or a hype track for an emerging nation. And then they arrive at a place called Beer, which simply means well.
Right, a water source.
And instead of the old pattern of complaining about water, the leadership digs a well, and the people actually sing. They perform the Song of the Well, which is a piece of poetry celebrating the princes and nobles who dug the water source with their staffs.
The contrast is just striking. I mean, just a few valleys ago, they were cursing the manna and facing venomous vipers. Now they are producing culture. They are writing their own history, documenting their journey, and singing songs of progress. They're really behaving like a unified nation state rather than a fractured group of refugees.
And that new unified identity immediately runs into hard geopolitical borders. Their northward momentum brings them right to the frontier of the Amorites.
And they approach this obstacle with unexpected maturity. Instead of launching some unprovoked attack, they engage in standard, ancient, Near Eastern diplomacy.
They send official messengers, right?
Yeah, to Sihon, the king of Heshbon. And the request is highly structured and very respectful. They ask for safe passage along the king's highway.
Which was the main trade route.
Exactly. They explicitly promise to stay on the main road, to not veer into the agricultural fields or the vineyards, and they even agree not to drink any water from the local wells.
It's a totally standard transit treaty. But King Sihon rejects the diplomatic approach entirely. He refuses passage, mobilizes his entire military force, and marches out into the wilderness to engage Israel at a location called Jahaz.
And Sihon is an entrenched regional power, but Israel doesn't retreat. They meet the Amorite army at Jahaz, and they execute a totally dominant military victory.
That wipe them out.
They defeat Sihon's forces and annex his entire territory, sweeping from the Arnon River in the south all the way to the Jabbok River in the north. They capture the Amorite cities, including the capital city of Heshbon, and they actually begin settling in them.
It's a massive land grab. And to commemorate this total victory, the text inserts another piece of ancient poetry, a taunt song. It's this victory chant that mocks the defeated Amorites, but it also heavily mocks the Moabites, who were the previous owners of the territory.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? Why spend precious space in a historical and sacred text reciting a poem that just mocks a defeated enemy's god?
Well, the Holman notes unpack the ideological warfare happening here. The taunt song specifically singles out Chemosh, the patron deity of the Moabites.
And Chemosh was a big deal back then.
A huge deal. Chemosh was a highly significant god in the ancient Near East. The notes point out that Chemosh is documented in records from the ancient city of Ebla, dating as far back as 2600 BC.
Wow, that is ancient.
Yes. Furthermore, Chemosh is the central figure on the famous Mesha Still.
Oh, the Moabite stone.
Right, an ancient basalt monument from the 9th century BC where a Moabite king attributes all his military successes and territorial expansions directly to Chemosh's favor.
So by recording this taunt song, Israel is fighting a psychological war, not just a physical one. They're basically operating within the theological logic of the ancient world.
Precisely the point. In the ancient Near East, a military victory was viewed as a victory for the victor's god over the loser's god.
Ah, okay.
King Sihon of the Amorites had previously defeated the Moabites, taking this exact territory and supposedly proving his gods were stronger than Chemosh.
Right.
Now Israel has completely dismantled Sihon, so the taunt song is Israel's way of declaring absolute ideological supremacy.
It's broadcasting to the entire region. Like, your god Chemosh couldn't protect his land from Sihon, and the mighty Sihon could not stand against Yahweh.
Exactly. It strips away the aura of invincibility surrounding these established regional powers.
And Israel rides that incredible momentum straight into their next conflict. Because after securing Heshbon, they pivot and march north toward the region of Bashan.
Which roughly corresponds to the modern-day Golan Heights. It is a highly fertile, heavily fortified region. And the ruler there is King Og, a figure legendary for his massive physical stature.
Right, he was considered a giant.
Yes, King Og mobilizes his forces and marches out to intercept the Israelites at a city called Edrei.
Okay, so picture this. You have an Israelite force that just fought a massive, exhausting campaign against Sihon. Fatigue has to be a factor here. Now they were staring down a giant king and a fresh army in a region known for its fortresses. But before the armies clash, the text notes a direct divine directive to Moses. God says, "Do not fear him, for I have handed him over to you, along with his people and his land."
And that directive translates into absolutely flawless tactical execution. Israel decimates Og's army, leaving no survivors, and they seize his entire domain. The text notes they captured 60 fortified cities.
60. The tactical evolution here is just staggering. Capturing 60 fortified cities requires a level of siege warfare and sustained military organization that a group of desert nomads simply did not possess just a few months prior.
It's incredible. And the psychological, the so what of this entire chapter really comes into focus here. The NWA notes summarize the lasting impact of defeating Sihon and Og.
What's the main takeaway there?
Well, these twin campaigns weren't just about acquiring grazing land on the east side of the Jordan River. They provided the foundational psychological certainty the nation desperately required.
Because they had to know they could win.
Exactly. Defeating two massive regional kings proved to the Israelites that they could trust their leadership, trust their God, and successfully execute complex military campaigns.
It was essentially the ultimate proof of concept before the main event.
Right. They needed undeniable proof that the frightened, constantly complaining generation that failed at Horma decades ago was truly gone. They were now a newly forged society, fully capable of crossing the Jordan River and facing the walled cities of Canaan.
Man, the transformation from the beginning of the chapter to the end is just profound. Let's trace the arc of what we've unpacked today from Numbers 21. We started in the vulnerable Negev desert, analyzing that critical vow and that breakthrough victory at Horma where a really deep victim mentality was replaced by divine reliance. Then we followed them into the brutal bottleneck of the Araba Valley, exploring the environmental trigger of those venomous carpet vipers.
And, of course, the cognitively demanding cure of the bronze snake, forcing a whole society to literally look at its judgment to find grace.
Yeah, such a powerful image. And then we observe the emergence of a unified national culture through the Book of the Wars of the Lord and the Song of the Well. And finally, we analyze the mechanics of their very first massive territorial acquisitions using diplomacy, tactical warfare, and ideological taunt songs to totally dismantle King Sihon and King Og, capturing 60 fortified cities in the process.
It was a total societal reconstruction from the ground up.
It really was. Now, before we wrap up today, I want to leave a provocative thought lingering for you. We discussed the bronze snake earlier and how that miraculous, entirely necessary instrument of healing eventually became the Nehushtan, an unhealthy idol that King Hezekiah was actually forced to destroy centuries later because the people just refused to let it go. When you look at the mechanics of that, you kind of have to ask a difficult question about your own life. How do we evaluate the tools of our past successes? Are you holding on to a specific mindset, maybe a defense mechanism, a career path, or even a relationship that genuinely helped you survive a brutal season in your past, but is now calcified into an idol that is actively holding you back from moving forward? Sometimes, the absolute hardest thing to dismantle is the very thing that once saved us.
That is a vital metric for analyzing our own progress, for sure.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration today. It is truly a privilege to take these deep dives into history with you. As we sign off, I want to leave you with this final reminder. God blesses all the listeners. Take care, keep questioning, and we'll be right here ready to unpack the next text with you soon.